So welcome to another installment of Exploring Consciousness with the Earth Nouveau Hub. And today's topic is ADDYOUcation. I was thinking, we're talking about being peacekeepers and peacemakers and truth seekers. And, at the end of the day, that all makes us educators. And educators from a perspective of having had to educate ourselves to really let go of all the emotional baggage and the conditioning, to clear out our character, to clear out our personality, and to really fortify our I am presence, I am personality. And then once we get to that stage, there is just so much understanding that, we are really here to be of service. And education is becoming the big thing as far as I'm concerned, because education is us being the example, being the teachers, being the students, being the educators, and educating ourselves in the process. So I just want to, let's look at throughout our journey of awakening or letting go of all the conditioning, as I said earlier on, what are the added values and the gifts and the contributions that have come through, that so that we can start really working with this vocational service, becoming really much more aware of our purpose, our mission, and then bringing our uniqueness into that. And then, of course, looking at the education system and, children all the way up into higher education, and see what we've got there and what's required. How can we add our contributions and what actually needs changing? So that's our topic today. Lots of us have children ourselves, or, being aunties and uncles and, friends. So it's a very familiar sort of subject we can look into. And whilst we're not calling it spiritual, everything of that is becoming the new spirituality. The more we are perceiving consciousness on a different level, the less we need to talk about spirituality, about enlightenment, about an awakening, because we're starting to emanate that energy and we're just becoming it. And we can just talk about very normal stuff with that accelerated and advanced understanding.
I had lunch yesterday with one of my friends who I used to work in tech with, and he has a 3-year-old. And we were just talking. My nephew is also 3. I don't have any children, but just talking about how the little ones, between that age, like the early years, they're just little sponges. They absorb everything and they're so smart. I was talking to when I was visiting my family back in the beginning of October, my brother came with his kids who are 3 and 6, and the 6-year-old, it was warm there, and I was showing the 6-year-old how to take an ice cube, right, and rub it here where the blood is closest to your wrist. And so a couple days later, she was complaining of being warm again. And the 3-year-old said, well, you can just take an ice cube and put it on your wrist because that's where the blood is closest to your skin. And I just went, oh my gosh, he didn't seem like he was listening to what I was talking about, but he repeated it word for word, 2 days later. So this absorption of information, right, when they're this young age, it's such a critical, important age, I think, for for kids, for their learning, for their lifelong learning. Because I think at that age too, they also learn how to learn.
Absolutely. It's like, I've been thinking in terms of the bigger structure, as you were saying, we're starting off from a spiritual evolution, from a human evolution, like working on instincts. And then the intelligence, the intellectualization comes in of that instinctual knowingness, until we then start moving more into the illuminated place of the intuition. And what you were saying here is, what I'm finding that as well. I'm seeing that with the youngsters, how they have a capacity of intellectualizing those facts, that the knowledge much faster than we have, or our generation, or the generations previous generations. Because I think so much, this education system is so much indoctrinating a lot of memory and facts and figures and historical backgrounds, and you got to learn it all by heart, and and it puts so much pressure on the youngsters. Whereas when you give them, like you did, an example in real life, and you don't make it a teaching, you just say it, as if you're having a really, simple conversation, it's so much easier for them. There's no barrier of, oh, am I going to remember that? You didn't say, oh, you need to remember that now, No, you're just having this conversation. There's such ease to it. And it's so much easier to intellectualize things.
Yeah, you took me back to my preschool days.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was, it's the Montessori. That's the Montessori. It's teaching them in the moment. Mm-hmm. And then they carry that forward. But when I read your the Facebook today, and I'm like, wow, I was thinking of all the kids' lives that I've touched through just me being in the classroom with them and teaching them. And I was in the elementary, I was in the school system, and then I left and went into preschool, and which is so different than the education system. That's the Montessori way, they taught that way. It's in the moment. It's a teachable moment, like we would say to them. But it was just brought back such a warm space in my heart because it just took me back to like, well, these kids are 15 now. Mm-hmm. And it's like, wow, who knows what they picked up, and who knows, now if they remember their preschool teachers.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just remember, if you're saying that 15 now, that's an interesting age. If a child has been prepared and contributed to in an expanded sort of way, then a 15 is no longer, that kind of puberty where everything just goes down the drain, and they fuck themselves up even more through their experiences, but they can already go almost into higher spiritual education. Because I think, I think at the end of the day, whilst kids and Amy, you will know, having worked with little ones, they need rules, right? Mm-hmm. Or let's call them guidelines. They need some guidance in order to obviously come through and learn how to live with other people in community, all this amnesia, and remember all of these things. So they do need guidelines. But if they are given a different way of education, a way of unity from the very beginning, that's not aggressive, that's not right or wrong, that then they have a much better opportunity to understand and to go into spiritual evolution much faster. Because, why did it take for us so long to start looking at spirituality? Because, we were so conditioned to living in the old system that there was no time, there was no thought wasted on spirituality. But if you come in with less of a package because of the education system and because of the parents that have already gone through the process, they can go straight into it and start finding schools, finding higher education, finding jobs that actually suits their talents and suits their tendencies.
Well, I also think that we got to look at like the education system. Like I think the kids that are coming in, the autistic kids, I hate to label them, but they're telling us what they need. Like the fluorescent lighting. No, we can't have the buzzing of the fluorescent lighting. Like that's too harsh. And I know when I was in the elementary school, the autistic room had lamps. They didn't use so like they did for those kids so that they could learn. But oh my gosh, right? Would that be so cool to have it for everybody instead of being like that prison kind of feeling? My daughter always said the high school felt, and it was a new school. And talking about 15, that's when she had her existential moments. Her like, I got to come home. I have to pick her up from school because she just couldn't handle it. She just couldn't handle her surroundings in school. Like she was starting to get that, these moments. But why we can't change that? Maybe, we do in preschool. We have soft lighting. And then it stops. And then once you go into the public schools, private schools, that's all the surroundings that like just feel like it just crushes that. That makes sense. Yeah, that's what I saw anyways.
Could I bring in something from a different perspective now that I experienced just last night? And I'm wondering if the few of us that are on here, if we realize how unique we are, we're roughly about all the same age group here. And I experienced something last night that I never really took into consideration before, but as educators, we can educate others because of our unique perspective of the age group that we fall into. So I realized last night, because I was having dinner and my mom called, and she called on the telephone to tell me something. And then right after I finished talking with her, I realized that my son, when he wants to communicate with me, if he's not home, he'll text message me and tell me whatever he wants to. He never picks up the phone to call me. But in my mom's case, she can't do that. She just totally finds it a big problem to use text messaging or even go down that avenue whatsoever. And I realized that I'm the one who is in the middle on both sides of the equation, that I need to know how to communicate with both sides. The side where it comes from the younger generation, where they just use text messaging to send you a message, and the side of the older generation, our parents' age, that the only way they can communicate with you is by picking up the telephone and talking to you directly. And so I realized that, and I realized, I need to know how to do both things. So the pressure is on me, not necessarily pressure, but I need to know how to operate on both sides of the spectrum. How am I going to use my phone to communicate with the older generation, and how am I going to use my phone as a tool to communicate with the younger generation, which I find rather unique, in itself. And as I said, we're all roughly about the same age group. So I find that quite interesting and wonderful all at the same time, that we can become very special teachers to all generations.
I really like that, Lana, because it's such a beautiful example that you can expand on. And, you know, as an educator, you got to be a mediator. And as a mediator, you got to be multifaceted. You know, you have to have a perception that expands, as you say, just one avenue. You have to be really interested, first of all, in communication, in bringing people together, in communicating with people on all different levels.
Exactly.
You know, your example with the phone, texting or calling actually expands. If we expand that from an education perspective, part of the changes in the educational system are to really acknowledge the diversity of communication.
Yes.
Not just communication, but the diversity of everything, and bringing that unlimited point of view, that lack of aggression, that lack of right and wrong, that necessity for no prejudice, for non-judgment, all of that. You're absolutely right. This is exactly what that mediator aspect that we as educators have to bring in.
I mean, I don't think it necessarily is generational though either. You know, I mean, I look at, like, I just think of what AB says about your level of awareness being equal to your level of responsibility, right? I mean, I think we're all working as bridges to many things. Right. I remember having a conversation with one of my friends who I went to college with when I was visiting my sister last June. And I started talking about multidimensionality, and I just, you know, his eyes just like rolled back in his head and glazed over. And I thought, oh, I need to know my audience, right? You know, so he didn't understand what I meant. But that doesn't mean that we weren't having great conversations about, you know, other things. So I think just like knowing how to meet someone sort of where they are, and that's where, you know, the teachable moments kind of come into things, right? And I could have explained in more detail what I was talking about, but I could just tell that he wasn't open to really hearing it, or wasn't ready to hear what I was talking about. So, you know, I backed up and we talked about other things, you know, and I think that's just who we are. I think the more our level of awareness expands, the more we have to be that bridge.
Great point, Tanya. I like that.
And like you
And
said too, you communicate.
the level of awareness. I like that, because there are some older folks who are very savvy in using the tool of texting. But
My
they're in a
parents text,
minority.
you know, they're in their 80s, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the level of your awareness and your responsibility to that. But that's interesting, because somehow this YouTube video swung into my view just a few days ago, of a lady called Jane Elliott. And she was talking about racism, and she was making a point that we have to look at our race as one race, as just the human race. And once we start looking at everyone without color and race, we become the human race. And as the human race, now we can really be just like one, you know, the one consciousness. And from there, we can, you know, be responsible for what we know, and how we can educate, or when we need to back up. So I find all that quite interesting.
Absolutely. I think in the curriculum has to be awareness training. psychologically, we need a new psychology. The way it stands at the moment has to be completely adapted and expanded on the new levels of awareness and what the new age really requires. Socially, to bring in the unity elements, the group soul consciousness that not every, but anyone who has worked on the spiritual journey knows that we're going into service, that we're going into unity consciousness. And then, of course, cosmology. We need to start teaching the story of the human species. We need to start teaching the history from a different perspective, not from a perspective of territorial and who won what and war and conquest and all of that, but more from a unity perspective and the whole purpose of humanity as the galactic citizens, as you guys were saying, you know, what does the new civilization look like? There has to be an element of what is a new civilization? What does it look like? And then on the mediation has to be taught. Mediation has to be taught because, you know, I mean, all of that can be taught without even once throwing in the word spirituality, if people get scared about that. But mediation in itself is such an important thing, because even if you think, because it's also connected to the celestial medium journey, because we're going away from mediumship. Mediumship used to be, okay, channeling, right? One of those outside entities are taking over our bodies and we're bringing the information through, and we close our eyes and we don't even know what we're saying until we hear it or we read it, what we've written. That's no longer the case. We have all become mediators instead of mediums. And as you'll see, I mean, less and less people are going to mediums wanting to be told, not less and less. I keep forgetting. Obviously, you know, there is a certain level that is looking at that. So we are speaking to that percentage, whatever that percentage is.
I mean, and I would even say more and more because this, you know, psychic abilities are all of a sudden coming more into the public consciousness, right? I mean, you're preaching to the choir when you're talking to us, right? Because we've been in that sphere, in that space for a long time, but for so long, you know, there's so many people who were doubting, but now all of a sudden there's like an opening for energy healing work and mediumship and, you know, crystals and all different types of, you know, esoteric practices that weren't really in the public consciousness before, right? When you have celebrities talking about their meditation teacher and, you know, that brings it into the public consciousness.
Absolutely.
That's the
Absolutely.
thing I was thinking about. Okay, so mediation, right? It took me back to elementary school when I did playground duty. So there's these little dribbles actually coming into our being, and they peer mediators were what they were called. And they would train these 5th graders, and they would be a mediator with each other. If there was a problem on the playground, it'd be like the peer mediator would go fix the, you know, what was happening. But like, it's out there, but it's not what we see it as it should be. So there are little nuggets out there. We're just not there yet to teach the full spectrum of what it could be out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that too, and this is why it's just one sec, Alfredo. It's we're not trying to disregard what's out there already, but we need to look at it, or we can look at it and start building upon it. And when we talk about stuff like that, it's really just to remind ourselves, because our interests change so quickly, and we move from one thing to the next. And I find it sometimes a good idea to talk about that stuff, because it brings up ideas. So, oh yes, what could I add? What of me can I add to that to make this a more expanded sort of experience for people that I haven't actually acknowledged yet, that I didn't see because it's so easy for me. It's one of those.
Yeah.
Alfredo, sorry.
Oh, you're good. I'm just still listening. Yeah, it's becoming more and more like a part of like general well-being practices, like all the people coming out with information as a part of like general well-being practices, like they're teaching at school, it's on the internet all over the place. But you know, we have greater awareness of like not just the basics but beyond that. So I noticed a lot of my coworkers are finally like getting into like taking care of their body, like doing like the hot saunas or like the cold plunges and like all these other things. They're finally getting into it, like, oh yeah, I did this, did that. And I can kind of like bridge the gap when they start talking about it, because they're finally stepping into the basics. Like, okay, finally you're getting into this, so I can kind of give you a little bit more information, like drip feed more little bits and pieces that I haven't been able to share, because there hasn't been like a general understanding of it. But now that it's like people are like getting into that, I kind of like drip feed the.
Well, you muted yourself, Alfredo.
Getting like a random call. But yeah, I just want to say that like we can kind of like bridge the gap now, because the level of awareness of consciousness has been rising, at least for me and my reality.
Hey, Alfredo, how old are your kids?
6 and 7.
And are they going to school, or how do you?
Yeah. So they're going to general public school. You know, they were at first it was like regular school, but then you know we kind of transitioned them into. They got a lot of autistic programs here in the district we're in, so we kind of had to change. You know, one has to go to a different school because they have more, you know, more learning tools and teaching tools for Malik, because he doesn't speak too much English. He's, you know, just also speak light language all the time. So they got a school for him, and you know, using tablets or visual processes, like things that, you know, kind of bridge the gap with autism. It's like they can communicate with visuals and all these other things. So, and then Elroy, he's at another school. So there's more things that are they're more understanding and they have more tools based, you know, instead of like the basic, you know, public school teaching that's been going on forever, which I like, because communication with them is different.
Yeah. Well, and I think now, because there are so many more people who are youngsters who are on the spectrum, that there is more of an awareness in, you know, teaching from that perspective. I mean, I know one of my friends has a 17-year-old who is on the spectrum and had a terrible time in the school system that he was in, you know, and she ended up, you know, lawsuiting the school district because they didn't have tools for him at that age. But, you know, now 10 years later, Alfredo's kids are receiving that. So, you know, there certainly is change, right, that's happened over those last 10.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's a much greater awareness about it nowadays, and it's more accepted. Like it's a normal part of society. You know, it's not like, you know, I mean, when I was younger, it was definitely like, oh, those are the, you know, special kids, whatever. It's more like these are other people just like us, you know. Anyways, it's definitely changed over the years from what I've seen when I was young versus like me being older and seeing it now playing out. It's totally different. And there's a lot more like autistic kids out there. There's a ton of them. It's, like the busted pics of our kids, like it's full of all sorts of kids. Like there's autistic kids everywhere. Anyways.
Yeah,
Well, and I think one of the things that AB said about autistic kids was they were coming in now to help change the way that we educate the children.
Oh yeah, they don't want to conform to the way we've been doing things. That's for sure.
I think you know, changes that happen now, like we can count in decades rather than in centuries, right? It's really that fast, you know, until we have like, seems like we have already 5 generations living in one, throughout one human life now, with all those, with all those changes. And that mediation, you know, from the celestial medium journey, obviously, because this seems to be the theme that is coming through here, talking about educationers or educators as mediators. And I think that is a really, really cool way of looking at it, you know, mediating between the different levels of consciousness, mediating between the different levels of experiences. And for us, this is also, as far as I'm concerned, obviously it's interesting to me because we are going to really need those mediator skills when we're working with other species and when we're going on to the planet, other planetary systems with much more conscious awareness. So I think, you know, that mediator level that we can, and it almost doesn't require anything else. I say anything else other than the next level of education, which is really intuition. I think intuition, illumination for me is working with our intuition. What is required here in order for me to mediate between the different levels of the different dimensions, because that's what levels of consciousness are.
And I think the nonverbal, like Alfredo's son, I mean, they're the ones that are really going to teach us how to communicate, not being able to speak. I just remember I worked in the handicap room one year and nonverbal. And when you look at this one child, I remember her, and the way she looked at you, you knew what she was saying. And you just learned the way she would express herself. And you knew that. So I think that feels so cool to me, that to be able to learn how to communicate with the nonverbal. And, you know, that can even go into like Alzheimer's people too, the older generations, when they start not being able to speak or communicate to you, learning that too. So I don't know. It feels like it's all like, you're right, it's like this 10-year span from the youngest to the oldest. It's like this whole wave of mediating with each other. Just feels like it all comes together.
Well, I
Just
think
reading
about
straight up body language.
you know, the Despicable Me movies and the Minions. I love those crazy little yellow guys, but I think that they are teaching us how to speak universal language, right? Whether it be light language or the language of just knowingness, right? Knowing what someone is saying, even though you don't understand the words, right? And you know, I think that having those movies, I don't know when they were released, but certainly within the last 7, 8, 9 years, you know, that way of communicating and that way of saying, okay, here's some beings, we don't know what they are, but here they are interacting with us on a human level, and we don't know exactly what they're saying, but we know what they're saying. Yeah,
The minion light language.
exactly, you know, and the the joy and is there. It makes it fun to communicate in that way.
So
You
during
know, and
Thanksgiving, are you finished, Tanya? I'm sorry.
I can hold that thought.
Okay. So during Thanksgiving, I had this experience where I found myself being a mediator between the 2 different generations again. And this was the first time it really dawned on me that, hey, you're actually mediating between the older generation and the younger generation. I was talking with my husband's aunt during Thanksgiving. We were sitting around the table after we had our Thanksgiving dinner, and she was telling me about her step granddaughter, who is roughly in her early 20s or something like that, and how she was dissatisfied with her job, working. She was working in the pharmacy area, and she was not happy with that. So she left that job and she went to a different job. And then she was dissatisfied with where she went to, and she went back to the older job that she had before. And so her stepdad was kind of not thinking that she knows exactly what she's doing, and that's how she's dissatisfied with everything, and she's not happy with life, blah, 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 blah. And I was trying to say, well, you know, if you look at it from her perspective as a younger person versus a middle-aged person or an you know, a senior citizen perspective, you're not going to see what she's seeing, you know, and that you have to see it from her perspective. And when you see it from her perspective, why she's doing what she's doing, everything's going to begin to make sense to you. So as I was explaining this to her, she was thinking about it, and she's like, you know what, you're probably right. Because she was saying that she was actually working in the same, my husband's aunt was actually working in the same pharmacy area where like stocking the shelves and stuff like that, where she knew the other people who were working in that area. But she didn't realize that the people, and they were saying that how, you know, the management in that pharmacy area, wonderful people, blah, blah, blah. But the step granddaughter wasn't actually happy with those people there or the management. And she couldn't see why the child was not happy working there, because everybody else says that it's a great and wonderful place to work, management and so on. So I'm saying to her that you have to see that those people who are saying to you that everything is wonderful is your age group. And so they're not seeing it from the child's age group perspective. And so when I started to explain all that to her, then she started to think about it, and she realized that, hey, you're probably right. What you're saying, it's that different age group and seeing it from their perspective rather than from my perspective. And then she realized that, hey, I made a mistake here. And so she started to calm down about the girl's choice. You know, all that going back and forth from different jobs. And so I realized afterwards that, hey, I was mediating here between the two generations, and my son was sitting right there and he's listening to me, you know, what's going on. And I'm thinking, he's probably thinking in his mind, hey, mom's picking up for our generation here. This is really good. So yeah, that's where I kind of recently found myself in that mediator position, which, you know, I felt good about that I was no longer taking sides for anybody.
So Lana, let me ask you, for people out there and you know, who want to become mediators, for all of us, the question goes to everyone. Let's give one important point or one example, what has helped you to become a better mediator or to become a mediator, that we could pass on as we are adding our us as addyoucators.
That's
I mean,
a big question to answer.
For me,
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think it's neutrality,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think being able to back up and see things from many perspectives, right?
Yeah.
But not feeling attached to any of them.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was thinking. You have to get into that position of being the sacred neutral person and then you're not for either side, you know. You're just in that sacred neutral, and you're seeing both perspectives, and you're seeing it from a 360-degree circumference, and you just being
And
there.
and sometimes just being quiet, right? And letting the two different people like have it out. Because when there's like discussions around politics or religion and there's two opposing viewpoints, you know, like sometimes not engaging is really the best way. Because if there's an argument, then all of a sudden, if you're holding a neutral point of view, then maybe because you don't have an opinion, you become the target, right? So, you know, sometimes it's just being able to say, okay, well, maybe, you know, so-and-so can have their say and you can have your say, and you're going to have to agree to disagree.
Yeah, if you can neutralize the prejudice on both sides when you're in the sacred neutral.
And know when to duck, know when to duck out of the way, right? When something comes back.
Yeah, for me, I feel like it's learning the other person's language, you know, and knowing, and it could start even from toddlers, from kids, you know, learning how they speak and what they're communicating, and just those certain words. If you pick up on people's certain words, and I'm just talking like within my family, you kind of can pick up on, oh, this is how she likes to communicate. Oh, this is okay. To me, that neutralizes. To me, that's a neutralizer, instead of always going like, trying to be not combative, but, you know, kind of like just learn their language, learn how they speak, learn the words that they use and the tonations that they use, you know, their face, you know, the way their body is. For me, that's kind of what I've learned over the years too.
Yes, Amy, you're right, because that's what I realized last night, that I needed to learn the language of how my mother communicates versus how my son communicates. They're both correct. Neither is wrong. I can't force anyone to do it differently, but I must be the one in the middle who must learn how to communicate with both sides.
Yeah, and then once you learn your mom's language, then it's so much easier to be able to talk with her.
Yeah.
You know, there doesn't become this, I don't know, sometimes it can be tension, you know. Sometimes she brings up stuff like, you know, that's like, but yeah, I agree. And then learn how to talk to a teenager, you know, learn how to talk to a 3-year-old. It's kind of cool.
Beautiful. It's really becoming really good at switching between the actor and the observer. And one thing I want to point out here is we're not talking about the actor and the reactor. We're cutting out the reactor. We are talking about acting or observing, sacred neutral observation and acting. So one of the things that I want to pass on has been that cutting out the reactor, the need, the necessity for becoming emotionally balanced and not being afraid of not displaying emotions, not thinking that without emotions, you are nothing. That is not the case at all. It's not the case at all. That's one of the things that, it's one of the things which is a big thing that includes everything you guys are saying. You know, it's like you're not less if you don't voice your opinion, because as you guys all said, sometimes, you know, the knowingness, the wisdom within yourself tells you when to shut up and to go out there and make your point. Because it's got nothing to do anymore with being right or wrong or having the passion or any of that, but having that expanded perception of what is required right now in order to create for the unity, for the entire group that you're actually talking to. So you have to really expand your perspective far beyond the little self-individualized personality you.
That is awesome, because that just happened to me this morning, because I could have said something, but I didn't. You know, I could have said something and I didn't, which didn't cause an argument or didn't cause, you know, dissonance, you know, and it was like, I looked at that and I'm like, whoa, I really had to kind of like, because you know, when you know something and you're like, you know, I want to say this, but I'm not. It just gonna say, no, don't even bring it up. But it was cool to watch that. So yes, I agree with that. The reacting.
It's beautiful if you can just, and it's not a holding back. Yeah, it's not that. It's not you not standing up for you. It's not you voicing your truth. It's knowing what is required that creates more. Does that create more? And it's so often now that you probably also, I've seen it now quite a bit from where I've just been. It's like what comes out of people's mouths is not matching the energy they're actually showing you. And it's like, do I go into an argument here? Do I walk away? Or do I just like, okay, all right.
That's so true. That's
Basically fucking lying at you. You're lying at you and go, oh, really, thanks.
Just combobulated energy coming out. The fuck.
Oh,
I have
Oh
this,
my God.
I have this little, you know, my intuition, you know, when I'm talking with someone, they're, I don't know, telling me, I don't know, whatever, right? I mean, that ability to read the room is really
Yeah, that's a
important.
good way. That's a good phrase. Yeah.
I have when, you know, when I'm talking with someone and they're talking about, I don't know, something, and they're not being truthful, right? Just talking about this
Yep.
mismatch of what's coming out of their mouth and what's actually going on. There's a little voice in my mind that just says, liar.
Exactly.
Liar.
That's your bullshit.
It makes me think of the movie. I don't know if you all have ever seen the movie Tank Girl. It's one of my favorite movies. It's hysterical, but Naomi Watts plays Jet Girl, and she's really into technology, and she's developed a little communicator that reads the energy of people and says when they're lying, and that's the same voice, liar. Right. And then you can say, okay, I can see, you know, I can see you're trying to present something to me that is not really what's going on. So I'm just going to back up and then ask questions, right, that allow the truth to bubble up to the surface, right? And whether the person's uncomfortable about saying it, right, or just is you know, in a space where they can't own it. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are going on, why people would speak from an untruth.
So you're reminding me of Pinocchio, that you're seeing their noses grow. They're flying. It's going out and in, out and in.
Yeah.
If they were Pinocchio, they would have a long nose, wouldn't they?
Well, and you know, then to be able to say, okay, clearly this person isn't either, you know, open or trusting, or, you know, but still holding that neutral perspective. It doesn't matter what you're saying, right? I can read your energetics, right? I know what you're saying, even though you're not speaking it, right? So I think as, you know, as we all get more sensitive and intuitive, which I think is the way humanity is moving as we move it into this new operating system, that, you know, we're having a wider awareness of truth too.
Oh yeah.
And these tools are like, you know, like you were saying, Tanya, asking a question, that is literally a tool. That's literally a tool. Whenever you get stuck anywhere, just ask a question. You can even ask yourself the question, what question can I ask? Or ask the group. And I think group mediation, well, anything is a group mediation really, because we're interacting with anything, be it now with your cat, your dog, or anyone else, is that, you know, staying in the question, but not from a perspective of we need to filter out any facts or figures, but what we need to do is to expand our awareness and to what's the word, dispel, you know, that energy sometimes, that wacko energy. It's like, ooh, that. And also at times it's knowing when to leave the room, because it can be quite uncomfortable. It can get quite uncomfortable. And then just know when to choose to take yourself out.
So one of the things I'm thinking about as you were talking about that, Tanya, is that we have to educate, as Martina put here for the topic today, educate ourselves to be more truthful, to stop lying, because as others' intuition develops more and more, they're going to see when you're lying and when you're telling the truth. So this is one of the things that we have to begin to practice to stop lying. Because as we're going into the new system, in the fifth world of peace, we can't practice lying anymore. It's going to be as clear as day eventually, that others will see that in you.
Well,
and you will
I
not
mean,
fit in.
I think some of that just comes to that love and acceptance of yourself, right? Being okay with wherever you are right now in the moment, right? And just loving and accepting yourself completely therein, right? Because when you're coming to that space of awareness and truth here and now in this you moment, then there's no, there's no need for that type of deception, I think.
Yeah.
It's part of the authenticity journey of the I am.
Yes.
And thanks for mentioning, Ilana, because it has another impact as well, because the more we do not align authentically to our soul essence, the less we're going to manifest the ideas and creations that we are intuitively know that we can. So that spiritual entrainment or alignment, attainment is really, really important for manifestation purposes, because we are getting to that stage. Like you say, Lana, that people can perceive what we're thinking, but fuck them. What I'm saying is what you're thinking you are going to create or not. You know what I mean? So this is another education for people to really appreciate that level of advancement that we are going into because of the energies that are coming in. So the less we are going to be aligned, the more crap we're going to create.
I mean, I think part of that too is just letting go of worrying what other people think about you. Because when you don't care, then you can bring your I am expression forward in a fuller way. Right. And I mean, I know I look at my journey and think about, all of the fear of judgment, throughout my life, and trying to explain earlier in my spiritual journey, like some of the things that I was experiencing and people didn't understand. Right. And so I felt that there was judgment there. Right. And so then it was a journey which was more more personal and alone, right? Because the people in my life, in my bubble of reality, couldn't hear me, right, or see me. And so then it was just, very inward journey, which it is in a way anyway. But it's nice, it's nice to have now a community that is more, open to these, types of experiences and types of discussions. So knowing, that knowingness that there are, like-minded people who have gone through the same experience. And, part of my journey was to help teach the clients who come to me, right, that it's okay. Here is someone who sees you and can understand your experience, because I've been through it, right? I've been in that place of feeling alone with my psychic gifts and abilities, where people couldn't see and hear, right? And so those are some of the people who come to see me now as clients.
That's a brilliant point. There are so many people out there at the moment. They call themselves isolated. They call themselves abnormal. They call themselves, they feel that they do not belong because they have no understanding that part of that journey is to be alone for a period of time. It's okay to do your own thing, to do your inward spiritual journey, or to just stay away from people and do whatever it takes for you to become more excited again to go out there and interact with other people. It's absolutely okay. And you know what? It's like for lots of people who find themselves in this space, they make themselves so wrong. It's not even that others make them wrong, it's they make themselves so wrong, because it's such an incoherent way of education, what it means to be on your own and what it can mean to be on your own. Everybody thinks, oh, you're an outsider now, you're nobody likes you. No, it's part of the journey. It's the fucking law. And if you can't be on your own, then learn to be on your own.
Well, and just getting back sort of to the education system and the way, how it's changed, right? I think that we're seeing that, right, kind of across many different parts of society, right? Where, oh, okay, well, 20, 25 years ago, if you were psychic and seeing spirits, you were crazy. Now it's just an more normal, everyday kind of thing, right? So,
Well, they have that new sitcom on television right now. It's called Ghost.
hysterical. That's so funny.
Normal that she's seeing all these ghosts that are living in the house that she's living in. So it's becoming mainstream normal to see ghosts.
And that's based on a UK series. So yeah, I mean, I just think that shift is interesting.
What about people who are pathological liars? Now that we're shifting, the Earth's moving into a lighter part of space, how a person who is currently a pathological liar, will they be affected in this lighter part of space?
What do you think?
Well, I'm asking the question, how will they fit in? They'll have to be re-educated, of course, that this is not going to be accommodated in a lighter part of space. Or maybe they'll just fade out of our reality. We will not realize that they're there anymore. And they'll be falling into a different dimensional plane of existence, that they will fit into where people are similar to their energetic field of reality. Yes.
I mean, as a as a former liar, as a recovering liar, I can speak a little bit to this. I'm an oldest child, and although my parents weren't really strict, they had very specific ideas about how their daughters should behave. And I wasn't really interested in that. And so I did a lot of, lying when I was a young teenager because I wanted to do things that my parents wouldn't allow me to do. And so I just told them I was doing something else and I would go do what I wanted to do. I mean, now I really don't give a shit what people think. So I don't really, it doesn't really matter. But there's that feeling that I had as a younger, young teenager, right? Going through puberty and awakening to all kinds of things that I wasn't able to, I didn't feel like I could share that. I didn't feel heard, right? And I didn't feel seen. And so, just thinking about being in that place, I didn't really have that tribe or community, right, that could hear me and see me for what I was going through. And I didn't even know what I was going through. I just knew that I didn't want to feel restricted. Right. And so that, that was my journey. And of course, I've evolved as, as a human, and, I can see how that served me then. And if I were, I just didn't have the kind of relationship with my parents where we talked about emotions. No one ever said, "Hey, Tanya, how do you feel?" It was like, did you do your chores? Did you do your work? Did you do your homework? Did you do what you're supposed to do? Right? Did you fall within our expectations? And so, sometimes I didn't, and I didn't talk about that. There wasn't an audience for it.
Yeah. Well, that sounds to me that you had an understanding of choice at a very early age onwards, I mean, let me speak to the other level of lying where you're lying to yourself because you're still bogged down with conditioning and a worldview that you adhere to, which has absolutely nothing to do with you. And what that obviously does, it jeopardizes your joy and your happiness and your spiritual attainment and your level of progress and growth, and of course your level of perception, because you keep getting stuck in the old struggle, in the old. But having said that, we have to remind ourselves that lots of people are in a certain place and they're perfectly happy with it because they don't even think about spiritual attainment or soul emergence or breathing like a soul like we do. They think we are utter nonsensical and crazy, and that's okay too. So whatever works for them. But I think if we carry on lying to ourselves, whichever level we're at, we will not grow the way we could grow in whatever direction we have chosen as a soul, and really acknowledge ourselves as the quality of our soul, and and never get to the next level of building that that rainbow bridge, to the next level of intelligence.
It's interesting to me because I think as you were speaking, I was seeing the image of, like a big clay jar. Remember the wine jars that they used in ancient Rome and ancient Greece? And, when I'm working on someone in their energy field, I can see almost like an energetic structure, right, around the energy field that looks like one of these clay jars. And that's the information from the global narrative, and it's what the person has been taught. And sometimes they still live within that energetic structure. It's present in their energy field, right? So when there's a crack, right, if you drop a big clay jar and it cracks, right, that's when the other information starts sort of like coming in. And does the person want to, shore that up and repair it? That information's not really there, or are they going to allow that structure to, start to disassemble and come from that place of owning their own individual experience, right? And that's where the light starts shining in, right? And that's where the reflection can start happening, I think.
And sometimes we talked about this before, because sometimes you can't even see the potential and you get blinded by, let's say, the light. You get blinded by it and you almost can't appreciate that the person is not going to choose it. And that brings us back to the neutral observer, that's kind of difficult, especially for people who love growth and, the evolution of humanity, and we need every single one. And then there are these people, but then again, they come in with a different purpose. And some of them are perfectly happy because they are aligned to their purpose. And that's the other thing where, to really acknowledge the different levels of soul, of karma and dharma, and the agenda of the soul. The long term, it gets more and more complicated as we go up, as we build that rainbow bridge, because we've got to look at the short-term agenda, the long-term agenda, and take all of that into consideration.
I see metaphorical sunglasses as a big business in our future. Because as that thing cracks open and the light's coming in, you're going to need some sunglasses to mediate between you and the light.
That future is so bright, you got to wear shades.
That's right.
Yeah. Addyoucation, add you.
There's I've been working with a lot of I know a couple Reiki masters, one who is one of my students who is a school counselor, and it's like a K through 12, K through 8 school. And I know another school counselor, Reiki master, who I've been working with, and I know teachers. And just getting back to the education system itself, this energy around support, right? I look at these women who are working as counselors, and there's so many kids coming in who are starting to all of a sudden awaken to their gifts and abilities, and are so overwhelmed that they don't really know what to do or how to manage that energetically. And so see, these 2 women in particular who are working as bridges, to help with that understanding within the school system itself, and I see how needed their roles are, and even, looking at the support that they get, which is, sort of lacking from their superiors.
I see that in the education system in the future, going to have metaphysical counselors instead of just the education system council that produces these counselors in the school. They're going to have, as I said, the metaphysical type, because the new children are going to require that, because they're coming in from a different idea.
Yeah. You called John today?
So yes. So the school system will have to educate itself to bring in a different type of counselors into their system. The whole system will have to educate itself.
There's
But I do believe that they're there, though. They're in the system.
Yeah.
They're just not being heard, and it's the red tape, because I've seen them. They're there. So it's that red tape again. It's what the government says. It's what this is how we have to do things and move on. I don't know, Alfredo, if you've seen it, I mean, there are such sweet teachers out there and they want to teach. I mean, my one friend who's a teacher, she does yoga in her classroom. She does these simple little things for the kids. They're fifth graders. And just to make, like, it's there, they have to kind of do it sneakily, but they bring their crystals in, you know? So I don't know. It's kind of like, how do we, yeah, metaphysical counselors would be great.
Well, and I, one of my clients is a fifth grade teacher, and she is doing, mindfulness guided meditation in the classroom, like first thing in the morning, right? To help the students get grounded and get centered so they can learn in a fuller way.
And they're taking a risk because if the principal comes by or another teacher tells on them, they are taking big risks out there. So they're out there. There's an army of them.
Yeah. The gap bridgers, the infiltrators. And this is something, I think once we have achieved a certain level of perception and awareness and consciousness, it's the natural way to service is infiltrating again, and then using the sacred neutral, and using the I don't care, whatever happens, and then really starting, just like what you guys were saying, these are the people that create so much difference and they don't even know it. They're adding themselves to the vocation, and that is the vocation in itself.
Yeah, that just gives me chills because I can feel the future in my body right now. I can feel it coming through. I mean, I have chills head to toe. So yeah, it's just going to be beautiful.
There's a certification now that you can take in at San Jose State, and I think they're starting to run it now through all the Cal schools, but it's called Mindfulness B, which was developed by a friend of mine actually, and it's learning how to really be a meditation teacher to young ones, right? And so it's a certification that a teacher can take so they can be certified to, to have that neutral space, right? To be able to guide the little ones in, into a meditative state for, to what end, whatever, that calming people down and helping them have an awareness, right? And that awareness, right, of the emotional landscape, of what's going on in the body, right? I mean, I think everybody needs to know
how to deal with any trauma, with any, that kind of thing. And how do we get people like that? They have to go on their own journey first.
Mm-hmm.
And then the certifications are just a bonus at the end of the day, because the energy that they will exude and emanate will represent exactly that. And it will touch, just think of a teacher like that, like yours, or Amy's. She just walks through the school halls. Just think of what she achieves by just walking through and appreciating and having a vision, like you say, Amy, thinking of the future rather than trying to think of all the crap that happened in the past. And yes, of course, the past is a teacher, but we need visionaries, mediators, gap bridges. That, we need to have a vision. What does this new civilization look like? How can we, and then also acknowledge, some of those young kids, I suppose, but even adults, I mean, like clients and stuff. As we said, there is the potential. They've got it all written in their signature. They just can't see it yet. And that this is going away from fixing people. This is no longer fixing anyone. This is just inspiring inspiration for them to see themselves in a different light. But
And I wonder, no, I just wonder about these teachers. Sorry, I'm thinking of my friend. And these teachers, I feel, start out wanting to make change. Like you said, the yoga, the mindfulness, but yet they get caught up in the red tape of it all. So I feel like as like the 10 years, like, you know, you were saying, the decades, like, I think that these teachers will start making that, like, stand up for it, like,
Yeah.
stand up for it, like, just start bringing in lamps and turn off your lights and, you know, make it an awesome classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, and just, you know, going back to, you know, a teacher wanting to make a difference, right? And then all of a sudden, my sister's been a teacher, you know, for 25 years, and she's always overwhelmed with paperwork. You know, she's always sort of behind the 8 ball because there's just so much work, right? And now that things have transitioned to a digital space, it's a little bit easier because she's not handling, right, all of the paperwork. But, you know, I just think of, you know, how, like, she was just a freckle-faced idealistic kid when she started teaching, and then, you know, there's just so many issues, right, within some of the education system that she went through, because, you know, we have in California, we have huge diversity, but there's a lot of people, you know, who need ESL support. The English is a second language, right? And those people aren't, not that they're not educated to a point where they can understand the material, but there's the language barrier, right? And so, you know, I think about, like, bringing the meditation into schools and how, like, the teachers need that support too, right? Not just the kids, but the teachers.
I mean,
So I'm
yeah, you're
thinking-
right. All these kids have these IEPs that the teacher, I mean, because it's multi-dimensional classrooms, there's everybody in there. And we can't forget about the gifted kids that also need support because they're way above, or, you know, it's almost like, I don't know where I was going with that. It's like, I don't know. I just see this big vision. I don't know. My words, my mind's going faster than my words. That support that you're talking about, we need those types of teachers that have an assistant do the IEPs, you know, like make it simpler. Why are they doing that? You know, and I don't know. It's
Amy, what's an IEP?
Oh, it's Alfredo might know that. I forget what it stands for, but each kid that's labeled has an IEP, and you have to meet with the parents and write up all these reports about the child to the counselor. So it gets all around. It's this paperwork that they need to keep on the child. Alfredo might know that.
We call it ARD over here, but it's definitely like yeah, like you said, like they have all these documents of like what they're working on, and like it's like a big group thing that they have set up. Like have to do these Zoom meetings like every few months. I have to do a Zoom meeting. Like this is where the kid's at. This is what he's learned. This is where he's, you know, not learning in this area.
Progression. They want to see progression. Yeah.
It's like its own little separate progress support for the kids.
And if they're not progressing, then that looks bad on the school. Like there's all this money comes from the government. The school gets money if you score high, you know, on your tests. Oh, it's a whole scam. It's a whole scam.
Yeah, it's all about the grades and the test. And yeah, my dad, he's always coming home like bogged down with all this, like not only like teaching at school and like dealing with like a class full of like 30, 40 kids in one class, one teacher. Not only that, like also have to like go home and like grade all these things. Like they you know, they work at school and then they have to bring all this work home, and then they're working at home. It's like it never ends. So like just burned out teachers, probably the way the system is set up. It's totally burned out.
Yeah.
Seen that with a lot of teachers.
Yeah.
So I have another perspective I was thinking about just now, that can add to the education of the school system. So when my son was in high school, one day I happened to visit with the geology teacher. And it was one of the classrooms that I found very fascinating because she had all these rocks and crystals and all kinds of stuff in her classroom. And she and I got along the best. It was one of the nicest teachers ever I've met in the whole school system, was this teacher, the geology teacher. So I was thinking that the future of the education system, the geology department should be added onto the library section of the school, where teachers and students can go and check out crystals and bring it to their classroom and have it in their classroom
That's an
to
awesome
add a
idea.
better atmosphere, because
Yeah.
that will be like an easement into the whole school building itself, where you can go and check out rocks and crystals and all kinds of stuff, they'll make you feel better within the classroom itself. And to educate kids about how the crystals work, and what this one can be used for and what that one can be used for, that would be a fascinating thing.
Well, even the
As-
parents too. I
Crystal
used to give
library.
my kids little
Mhm.
crystals they put in their pocket. This was like elementary school. I started like, here, take this to school, and so it'd be in their pocket. Like even the parents can do that for their kids. And so they have that with them all day. But I love that
Yeah,
idea,
I
Lana.
remember when the kids switched from notebooks to all computers, and they all were given a computer, a laptop, to take to school and bring home every day. And I thought about, I made this bracelet for my son, and I put a shungite on the bracelet, so it was worn like something that's ordinary, that you will wear some kind of bracelet on your arm. But it was for his benefit to be in the school system with all this computer electronics around him all day long. And he used to wear it to school, but it wasn't identified by anybody as anything at all. But it was like a little sneaky way how to sneak in into the system, something like that. And I remember giving all his friends like shungite stickers to put on their cell phones. So when they went to school and they were all hanging out together in the lunchroom, they all had the same frequency going around, all of them, and others that were sitting around them. So that kind of balanced things out and kept them all calm,
Yeah,
So it was
sneaky's not
really-
so bad. Sneaky's not so
No.
bad.
It's like saying, how do you infiltrate the system,
Right. We have to go around the system. Yeah.
Well, I love that. I love that idea of checking rocks and crystals and stones, out of the library, right? Because
Yeah.
as you were talking about that, I have a lot of crystals, and they're all like, yeah, we like that idea too. We like that.
Yeah. But
Oh, Tanya. Oh.
what better way than introducing it through the geology department? Because they're already involved with all that stuff, right? Rocks and things like
I mean,
that.
I don't know, if I don't know if any of the high schools here have a, so to speak, geology department. Right?
They probably do, but they're not, talked about, and not a lot of kids would take that class, you see. So maybe that's why it's not recognized so much.
Oh,
Who
Tanya,
knows?
you could volunteer to be the rock lady that comes
Mhm.
in the classroom, just under the guise of rocks, not crystals. You could talk about that.
I've
I
done
mean,
that
The
actually.
queen librarian.
She can be she can be the mobile library geology.
Yeah.
You check
Have
out
some
your rocks.
crystals on your sorcerer's hat.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, I may even do that. That's a good idea, just to
You check it
volunteer
out
to do
for
that.
2 weeks, and then when you go back 2 weeks later, they have to bring their rocks back, and they get check a different one out. And come back.
Yeah.
If they bring it back,
if they bring it
So
back.
I'm just going to ground that idea. I'm just going to
Yeah.
ground it right into the center of the earth and into the grid.
So let's all
and
ground,
ripple
let's all ground
forward
that. Let's
my
all ground
bubble of
that idea
reality.
right now into the earth and say, we want that in our future for all
Yeah.
future children and all future school systems. Right?
Yeah.
We are a collective here. We can do that as a collective. Not
right.
as
Yeah,
a-
we can go volunteer in the school and show them our rocks.
You want to
Beautiful.
see my rocks?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the
Oh,
same.
yeah.
Got
Hello,
got
rock.
some
Hello.
rocks. There you go.
So
This
what
is
we
a
actually, why you
magic wand.
want to, oh gosh, yeah. So what we're actually saying here is, we got to rethink the interrelationship between all the different departments and subjects and, on the curriculum, and that is part of the new civilization. This is part of the new age too, where we're bringing religion and science back together again, because it used to be, not a separate thing anyway. And, bringing art and science and psychology and science and art and whatever. And as we're doing that, think about it, because we've been talking about the teachers being overloaded and everything. Well, they will have to cooperate as well, and then start teaching these classes together, which again maybe helps with the bureaucracy, or that kind of thing. So that's another thing, that separation. We're going away from separating, because we're talking about mediation, right? We're mediators between, bridging the gap. Now, once the gap has been bridged, there is no need for mediation anymore. Then we can go straight to what Herminia is saying, and just allow the children or anyone, adult education, to actually learn what they are interested in, not the shit they don't want to know. After the basics have been established that, enable us to live together as a unified sort of civilization, we're in love and wisdom, then everyone can do what they want to do, what they're really good at, and they can add, Kate, whatever to that new system. Absolutely. So it's that letting go of that separation. But then again, letting go of the separation means that we need to understand the soul journey. What is the separate form, and where are we going with all of that? Why are we doing this?
And do the kids know? Do the kids know at that age? Do the kids know at that age? That's the thing, what to do? What do they like? I think that's why they have that, is so there's things that they can see what they like. But what I was going to say, when we first talked, you said vocational. Well, another little nugget in school was the VOTEC school. Like, I don't know if you have VOTEC in UK, but it's like the hands-on mechanic, wood maker. Yeah. So, but that was not, you were like, it was judged as not good enough. I don't know.
It's not intellectual academia.
Right.
No,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But you can't outsource that to India, you can't, you have to.
That's part of the human experience too, right? I think this, like the idea of the vocational schools, right? Teaching skills for living life, right? There's a vocational high school near me, within a short walk. But I think about just like, talk about, right, that greater expansive experience, but going back to the simplicity of the human journey, right? We all eat. Why aren't we teaching nutrition and education, right? At a nutritional education at an elementary school like level, where those kids are just, so willing to learn. And that goes for like dressing yourself and like learning how to manage your body, right? As a youngster, right? And, maybe it's up to the parents to teach, but to pull that into the educational system. I mean, I think like when I went to high school, I had home ec and shop, right, where we learned to cook, we learned to sew, we learned to, make things with power tools, but that was in junior high school, right? And just thinking about elementary school, like I guess we learned some of that when I was younger. I can't really recall, but it seems like it would have value to teach kids from that perspective, right?
It does have,
Just-
they do have clubs after school now in elementary schools where they can stay and learn how to knit, and learn how to do different things. So, I mean, that's still something that's out there. It's just not grown. It's like stagnant.
I mean, I think about all of like TV, right? The TV shows are like the young kids educators. I think about like the kids baking championship, which I love watching, by the way. And these kids are just so creative in what they pull out of their, out of their hat for interesting ideas, right? They just really think outside the box, but, just learning, like Gordon Ramsay's, kids master chef, right? Where they're competing in competitions, making like beautiful plates of food, and I guess if kids are watching that, they're learning, they're watching and they're learning, they're watching and they're learning, right? And there wouldn't be that, I think, that show if there weren't an audience for it, certainly.
Absolutely. And frankly, it is a gross failure to think of, ourselves as a human being having an emotional, a physical and a mental body, and all that is really being fostered is actually the mental side of it, and not even in a correct way, just in a sort of facts and figures way, So absolutely that should not be an after school club.
No.
Available to certain people. That should be from the very beginning an education in the new age. Absolutely. Teach humans the quality of being human, because
Exactly.
that's what we need to learn being on this planet, and only then we can carry on moving into talking about teaching others.
Well, and thinking about also like where does the food come from? What's going on with the food system? Right? There's a lady here from San Francisco. Her name is Starhawk. She's been a long time activist, and she's a Wiccan, and she does this earth activist training, which she takes this program into urban schools to help teach these kids how to grow their own food, right? Creating community gardens and sort of like permaculture, right? It's just a different way of thinking about the urban landscape. Yeah.
So that falls under the umbrella of back to natural living. I mean, that has to be a huge teaching that comes into the new educational system, coming back into the natural living, how to naturally live as the urban shaman in the cities. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, and as we're talking about this energy is rippling outwards.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rippling outwards, planting seeds, grounding, rippling outward.
Group intentions.
I'm sitting here and I'm getting this strong feeling that the crystals want to be grounded into the school system. And Tanya, you're the crystal queen in the group here. Maybe we can do something like that before we close our show today, Martina.
Sure.
To get the crystals grounded into the new ADDYOUcation system, into the school. And I'm also getting that they want us to, maybe if we're all game, to add some light language into it. I see Harmenia is here too, and she speaks good light language. Martina,
I'm game, Lana.
yeah. Amy, you game for light language?
We'll see. It has to come. We'll see.
Yeah.
It comes, it comes.
How about you, Martina?
Absolutely. What we can do it as a group. We can do the light language as a group. I've done that once in a hall. Everyone just started speaking light language, and the vibration that it built was absolutely transforming. So maybe we can, prepare or just say a little thing, Tanya, about the crystals, and then we all start speaking the light language, and we take the whole group synergy into those crystals.
So you're saying we speak it all at the same time?
We speak it all at the
Oh,
same time.
okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So
Armenia,
I
are you
just have
there? Let's see, Harmenia. Harmenia, are you there?
Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Sure.
so I have a few that want to participate. So this is an Arkansas quartz crystal, which is really holds a lot of grounding energy. And then the grounding trinity, which is the hematite and the selenite and the obsidian, which work together in combination to really help to ground the spirit in the body.
Lana,
Yes.
I couldn't hear you. Sorry.
Oh, we were going to speak light language all together at the same time to ground the crystals into this new education system. I want to know if you want to participate in speaking light language.
Give me just 1 second. I getting out to my car because I was getting a meeting.
So Tanya is giving us.
I have my quartz too,
Amy
Tanya.
as well, yeah.
And I have spirit quartz.
Oh, and I'm gonna gong it in, okay? I'm
Gong
gonna
it in.
and then we're
Yeah.
gonna.
I have
Bring
my
my daily
hematite,
drivers.
a big hematite tower here. So I'm going to hold on to my hematite.
So I'm gonna gong it in and then just start chiming in whenever you. Okay, just with one sound, yeah. Ready?
Yep.
Natakia toto.
Pues camara, que panas canai.
Esila fatakis miktifi, manguadna lata ma kuati.
Grazie, grazie.
Satakala kata megetifi. Sengiafia.
Aho.
Aho.
That was unique.
How cool was that?
I got goosebumps.
Well,
I feel the energy in my back, in my spine.
Yeah, I feel it in my spine too.
Woo! Shooting out my feet.
Music to my ears.
You'll be interested when we listen back to it.
I can't wait for that one. That will be interesting.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. for
Thank you.
suggesting it.
And you know, we hijacked the system because it was something that I was not expecting to.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, they can't handle that.
Oh my goodness. Surprise!
Hijackers.
That was now we are the hijacker for this system
Yeah.
that we want to transform. I can see music in the air everywhere we go. New planet,
Thanks,
new
Martina, for letting
education.
me bring that in.
No,
Mhm.
good. Thank
That
you.
was
for bringing
awesome.
it in. That was
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a
Thank-
cloudy day and the whole skies like cleared out already.
So beautiful. Yeah, it was
Thanks.
foggy here, but now the sun's out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Thanks, guys. I think we're gonna close it on that note.
Mhm.
'Cause it's-
Yes.
It was just such a nice ending to our little show today. So again, thank you very much for being here. The recording is gonna come out. Love you lots, and I see you next week. Okay. Cheers, guys.
Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste.